Dear friends, on the 4th of October 2023, Pope Francis came out with a new Apostolic Exhortation called Laudate Deum. It is a document on integral ecology for the humanity. Laudato Deum is a continuation of Laudato Si, which was published in 2015 by the same Pope. Laudato Deum is a comprehensive, practical study about the current ecological crisis and proposes ways and means to find urgent solutions to it. Pope Francis does not mince words in the document with those who deny climate change, saying that the human origin of global warming is now beyond doubt. As Pope Francis describes how Christian faith encourages us to do our bit for the care of our common home. For example, the Global Compact on Education has already made it mandatory for all Catholic educators to make it a priority to work on caring for our common home. I quote from Global Compact on Education: "There is a relationship between our life and the life of our Mother Earth, between the way we live and the gift we have received from God. Therefore, it's apt for all people, especially Catholic educators and their stakeholders, to read, reflect, discern, and act upon the concerns raised in the new document." Laudate Deum means praise God. It has 6 chapters and 73 paragraphs. Each chapter is an in-depth study on the causes of our much-needed response to the burning ecological crisis faced by our common home. Chapter 1 deals with the global climate crisis. Chapter 2 is titled as a growing technocratic paradigm. Chapter 3 deals with the weaknesses of international politics. Chapter 4 examines climate conferences, progress and failures. Chapter 5 is what to expect from COP28 in Dubai. The final chapter, that is the 6th chapter, deals with the spiritual motivations of Laudate Deum. The Pope invites us to look at the warning signs and a call for co-responsibility in the face of the climate emergency. He exhorts the world leaders, environmentalists, educators, citizens, and all people to come up with a better response in the forthcoming COP, that is Conference of the Parties of the United Nations 28, which will be held in Dubai between the end of November and the beginning of December. Now let us look at the brief summary of each chapter. In chapter 1, Pope tells us that, I quote, "With the passage of time, I have realized that our responses have not been adequate. While the world in which we live is collapsing and may be nearing the breaking point." The document reminds us that the effects of climate change are borne by the most vulnerable people, whether at home or around the world. It is significant to note that there is a widespread misconception that it is all because of the fault of the poor. This is very unrealistic oversimplified notion spread by the developed nations. The document says, as usual, everything is the fault of the poor. Yet the reality is that a richer percentage of the planet contaminates more than the poorest 50% of the total world population. And that per capita emissions of the richer countries are much, much greater than those of the poorer ones. How can we forget that Africa, home to more than half of the world's poorest people, is responsible for a minimal portion of historic emissions? Therefore, Pope invites us to have a broader perspective that is very urgently needed. What is being asked of us nothing more than a certain responsibility for the legacy we will leave behind once we pass from this world. Recalling the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic, Pope Francis repeats that everything is connected and no one is saved alone. In the second chapter, the Pope speaks of the technocratic paradigm, which consists in thinking that reality, goodness, and truth automatically flow from technological and economic power as such, and monstrously feeds upon itself. Unfortunately, our immense technological development has not been accompanied by a development in human responsibility, values, and conscience. In an age of technology and fake news, and we have not realized that at the same time, we have turned into highly dangerous beings, capable of threatening the lives of many beings and our own survival. We have seen the wars that are taking place in Ukraine, in the Middle East now, and many parts of the world. The mentality of maximum gain at minimal cost, disguised in terms of reasonableness, progress, and illusory promises, makes impossible any sincere concern for our common home and any real preoccupation about assisting the poor and the needy discarded by our society. Astounded and excited by the promises of any number of false prophets, the poor themselves at times fall prey to the illusion of a world that is not being meant for them. Chapter 3 talks about the weak international politics. The Pope addresses the weakness of international politics, insisting on the need to foster multilateral agreements between states. He explains that when we talk about responsibility of some form of world authority regulated by law, we need not necessarily think of a personal authority, but of more effective world organizations equipped with the power to provide for the global common good, the elimination of hunger and poverty, and the sure defense of fundamental human rights. According to Pope Francis, unless citizens control political power, that is, national, regional, and local administrations, it will not be possible to control damage to the environment. That means he speaks and he's advocating for more democratic institutions. All this presupposes the development of a new procedure for decision making. What is required are spaces for conversation, consultation, arbitration, conflict resolution, and supervision and in the end, a sort of increased democratization in the global context, so that the various situations can be expressed and included. It is no longer helpful for us to support institutions in order to preserve the rights of the more powerful without caring for those of all. And in the 4th chapter, the document describes the various climate conferences held up to date. International negotiations, the Pope concludes, cannot make significant progress due to positions taken by countries which place their national interest above the global common good. The 5th chapter, the document put forth the expectations of the forthcoming Dubai COP. Looking ahead to COP, Pope Francis writes that to say that there is nothing to hope for would be suicidal, for it would mean exposing all humanity, especially the poorest, to the worst impacts of climate change. We cannot search merely for a technological solution to our problems. We risk remaining trapped in the midst of pasting and papering over cracks, while beneath the surface there is a continuing deterioration to which we continue to contribute. The document asks us to put an end to the irresponsible derision that would present this issue as something purely ecological, green, romantic, frequently subject to ridicule by economic interest. Let us finally admit that it is a human and social problem on any number of levels. For this reason, it calls for involvement on the part of all. The 6th and the final chapter is stemming from our Christian faith. Pope Francis reminds all human beings that the motivations for this commitment flow from our deep faith, Christian faith, encouraging my brothers and sisters of other religions to do the same. In fact, they need to go deeper and deeper into their own spirituality, spiritual basis. The Judeo-Christian vision of the cosmos defends the unique and central value of the human being amid the marvelous concert of all God's creatures. But as part of the universe, of all of us are linked by unseen bonds together, form a kind of universal family, a sublime communion which fills us with a sacred, affectionate, and humble respect. What is important, Pope Francis writes, is to remember that there are no lasting changes without cultural changes, without a maturing of lifestyles and convictions within societies. And there are no cultural changes without personal changes, personal conversion. Efforts by households to reduce pollution and waste and to consume with prudence are creating a new culture. The mere fact that personal, family, and community habits are changing is helping to bring about large process of transformation rising from deep within the society. The document ends with a reminder that emissions per individual in the United States are about 2 times greater than those of the individual living in China and about 7 times greater than the average of the poorest countries. So it is not at all justified, the argument that the poorest countries are causing more emissions. On the contrary, the truth is the other way. He goes on to affirm that a broad change in the irresponsible lifestyle connected with the Western model would have a significant long-term impact. As a result, along with indispensable political decisions, we would be making progress along the way to genuine care for one another. It is undoubtedly a profound document for all humanity to reflect and act upon for the preservation of our common home, for the future generations. The document is a great resource for all, especially Catholics and Catholic educators and their stakeholders, to enrich our schools, our education, our common life. Laudato Si and the Laudate Deum together make the best research document ever written on integral ecology. These are documents for the entire humanity to take note of. It is not only for Catholics or Christians. It is for the entire human society. Let us stand for the care of our common home, and let's hope for the best, that there will be changes. Together, we make decisions to take care of our common home. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.